Okay, here we go with all of the terms just for this module, the first of many. And I know you're like, are definitions important? Yes, they are. So this is why this is important, right? So as a designer or even just as a sewer, if when you're picking a pattern, a design, by knowing which fabrics would work best, it will make your life easier. And if you're a buyer or a salesperson, understanding what the fabric makeup is of a garment will help you sell it better. So fibers. Fibers are the smallest part of a fabric. They're fine, hair-like substances that are categorized as either natural or manufactured. So cotton, which grows as a plant, wool, which is shorn, cut from sheep, are two examples of natural fibers. And manufactured fibers are created from chemicals, and they include nylon, polyester, and spandex. So, what makes up a fiber, right? What makes up a fiber is actually known as a polymer, and it's just a large molecule that's made by connecting smaller molecules together, right? You're getting some science in here. And almost all fibers are polymers made up of organic materials, but some polymers are formed into films and used as textiles. So, for example, vinyl is a polymer that is made into a fabric. So most textile materials contain yarns, and yarns are just those continuous thread-like strands that are composed of fibers that have been twisted together. So, for example, with cotton, cotton is a short thread, and it's spun together in really, really long yarns. And there are various types of yarn, from flat to dull, shabby to lustrous. And all fabrics are just made from yarns that are either woven together or knitted. And companies that make fabrics are called mills. And one of the largest mills in the US is actually called Milliken. And the range of fabrics that are made and the types and the weights is tremendous. That's why that swatch book has so many samples. So twist and ply. So the direction that a yarn is spun in is called a twist. And an S twist is a twist that's been done at a left-hand angle, and a Z twist has been done as a right-hand angle. And the tightness of the twist is measured in twists per inch, known as TPI. And yarns that are spun together make a ply, and a thicker yarn will have a different effect. So most fabrics need an additional treatment, which are called finishes, before they actually can be used. And, for example, there are chemicals that are used to make fabric water repellent and make them suitable, for raincoats. There are brushing machines that are required to make things fuzzy on flannel shirts. And we talked about how silk needs to be pounded in. This process is usually done at what's known as a finishing plant. So textile. Textile is a term that was originally applied only to woven fabrics, but now it's generally applied to any flexible material that's composed of polymers or fibers or yarns or fabrics that are used to produce other garments. So often for the purpose of this class, I may say textile and fabric interchangeably, but I will try to be as specific as possible. So we talked about textiles, but there's some categories of textiles as well. And the first one we're going to talk about is interior textiles, and they're known just because they're used for home furnishings or home fashions, right? They're used in our home or other building interiors or exteriors that serve a purpose, to add comfort or visual interest. So think of, like awnings on buildings and market umbrellas. Next, we're going to talk about technical or industrial textiles. And, they're used it's a broad range of materials that are widely used for special applications of a technical nature, right? So they're generally not considered apparel or furnishing. So, think of tents and wetsuits and parachutes. Those are technical or industrial textiles. Next are smart textiles or smart fabrics, right? And these fabrics, react to the environment, or this some kind of stimulus, right? So either they provide additional protection against chemicals, or more importantly, thermal, right? So things that are wicking, things that keep you warmer when it's cold and cooler when it's hot. Then, of course, we have apparel, right? And apparel is just clothing or accessories that are made from textiles. Another term that you may have heard, especially if you work retail, is known as soft goods, right? So those are products that are constructed from textiles and other flexible materials. So they could include some of the types of textiles we've talked about. So apparel, interior textiles, smart textiles, or technical textiles. And finally, end use, right? And end use is just the application or function for which a textile is ultimately designed for, it's ultimately used. So, if a cotton is cultivated ultimately to make sheets, the end use is hopefully a good thread count, a good thread count sheet. Gray goods or grayish goods, right? And that just is any fabric that hasn't been finished yet. And, us as consumers rarely see gray goods except for those of us, as home sewers, as designers that actually use muslin in our designing process. So, muslin actually is a grayish good, it's an unfinished fabric. So, what is a weave? And a weave is just the intertwining of two sets of threads. So, a vertical thread and a horizontal thread. And it's done by using what's called a weaving loom. And there are three basic weave types: plain, twill, and satin. We will talk a lot about these three types during the course of this semester. So, make sure you dig in to those specific definitions in your textbook. So knitted fabrics are different, right? Knitted fabrics are constructed from yarns, really just by a series of interlocking loops. And you know, knitting can be done a couple ways. It can be done by hand or by a machine known as, it's just called a knitting machine. And the size of the stitch, so whether it's hand or machine knitted, dictates the chunkiness of the fabric. In the knitwear category, there's a subcategory called cut and sew knitwear. And cut and sewn is just fabric that's been knitted and then cut and sewn in a particular way, similar to what a woven fabric would be. And we encounter cut and sew knitwear in our everyday lives. It's t-shirts and leggings and sweatshirts, those type of garments. And they're cut and sewn because the fabric, the yarns are so inexpensive. So let's finish up our weaving processes, right, with lace. And lace is a lightweight pattern fabric that can be either hand or machine made. And, the holes are made by removing threads in woven cloths, and it can be very intricate work. And originally, some of our earliest fabrics, so linen and silk, were used in the lace making process. So we just talked about lace, and lace is often a decorative fabric. And the textbook has pages and pages of other decorative fabrics, so I'm not going to go through them all here. But I do want to highlight embroidery. And embroidery is a form of surface decoration, so something that's put on top of an already produced fabric. And it's made using threads and yarns in various combination of stitches. Okay, so we have just gone through about 20 definitions, and hopefully you had your notebook out and you were taking notes as you were listening. But looking at the textbook, there are a lot of definitions in the book as well. So anything that is in a blue box, you should read and review it. Make yourself familiar with those definitions as well. So now you're like, Professor Johnson, there's so many definitions. What do I need to know for the exam? And I don't want to say you need to know it all, but really focus on the definitions that are in this video, right? And then go back to the textbook, make sure you have a good understanding of the subheading. So, under fabric construction, the different types of weaves, under knitting, the different types of knitting styles, the different types of laces. And those blue boxes are a treasure trove of info.